I've enjoyed the sea physically. Let's enjoy the seaside visually by painting the colours, the shapes and the tonal values which make this California seaside the place it is. Hey guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. I'm George and today I'm in California in Torrey Pines State Beach. First time I've been here and we got up quite high and a pretty spectacular view up ahead. Just have a look at this. Really beautiful view, nice blue sea, interesting rock formations. So I'm going to go down a bit closer to the beach and try and find a spot to paint, set up my easel and do a plein air painting. And I know that California is a place where a lot of plein air painters like to paint. I've seen a lot on Instagram and things. And just looking at this landscape I can completely understand why, and it's definitely been a place that I've been really looking forward to get the opportunity to paint in. So I'm right down on the very south of California, close to the border of Mexico. I'm near the town of San Diego where I stayed last night. And yeah, just look at this. Thank you.
Because I had made a comment to my husband further down and we're like,
the sand actually looks quite dark down on that beach. I don't know if you can see it, but these rocks have a nice golden kind of glow to them. And often that golden, warm, contrasting against the blue of the sea can look really nice in a painting. So I've climbed down the big cliffs and I'm now on the beach, and it's really nice and sunny, and there's a lot of atmospheric mist around the shore as well, which is quite nice. But first things first, I'm going to go for a quick swim in the sea and then I'm going to paint. So one thing as well, this beach does seem to be a nudist beach as well, or a lot of people are in the nude. And if you're wondering, I am in my swimming trunks. So let's go for a quick swim. Waves are pretty big actually. I can understand why California is known for surfing. Oh, a bit cold. Almost getting to the point where I have to make a dive for it. Look at that wave, that's a big old wave that. Whoa! There we go. This is cold, okay? It is waterproof, yeah. So when it gets over the belly button, that's when it gets the coldest. That's the hardest bit for me. Once my belly button's under, I'm pretty much as good as in the water. Whoa! Okay, I'm gonna make a dive for it now. All right, so I'm gonna dive into the froth of this frothy wave. Got a lot of salt, but I'm in the water now. I'm swimming, and yeah. Here comes another wave. Whoa. So yeah, I'm in, and there's another wave coming up. Yeah. So here I am, swimming in the Pacific Ocean in California. Just
just coming out of the sea now. Really big waves. I think there's a few rip currents in there as well. So you've got to be careful for those because they can take you out quite far into the sea before you even realise it. Now I've enjoyed the sea physically. Let's enjoy the seaside visually by painting the colours, the shapes and the tonal values which make this California seaside the place it is. So I'm all set up and ready to paint now. I like how the cliffs are kind of slowly getting lost into the sea mist, and also this reflection and the colour of the sea I think is really captivating. I'm painting on a 30 across by 25 centimetre panel, gesso primed and toned to a neutral grey. Remember to subscribe to the channel. Let's start painting.
Here I start by painting a rough grid onto my panel using thinned down cerulean blue. I find doing this helps me plan the composition as well as allowing me to check the vertical and horizontal relationships of the shapes in the scene. I'm using a filbert brush made by Rosemary & Co, and this is one from their Ivory range, and I really like using filbert brushes as when turned sideways onto their finest point they can make really nice fine lines, and the bulk of the brush helps keep the line steady and consistent, whereas often fine pointy round brushes can bend too much, although they do have their use for painting finer details. To paint the sky, I'm starting by painting this light haze which sits on the horizon and overlaps the distant cliffs. For this mix I use cerulean blue, titanium white and a touch of cadmium yellow and alizarin crimson to make this blue greyer and a warmer colour temperature. As I paint the mid-section of the sky, I make a separate colour mix on my palette of cerulean blue and titanium white with a very small touch of cadmium yellow, and as I paint higher up into the sky the blues become deeper, so for the upper section of the sky I use ultramarine blue, titanium white and a small touch of alizarin crimson. As I paint I soften the transitions between these separate colour mixes by mixing my brush into both mixes on my palette to make the intermediate colour, and then applying vertical brush strokes between the different sections on my panel softly blend the colours to make a smooth, natural looking sky. Here I'm painting the swash, which is the thin section of water between the sea and the sand, which is washing backwards towards the sea. This section is typically a light blue purplish colour, as it is reflecting the colours of the sky above it. So I'm actually using the same colour mix that I used to paint the upper section of the sky for this part of the painting. I'm now painting a deeper blue colour mix which has more ultramarine blue mixed into it for the sea, which sits behind this thin pale blue layer of water, and I will actually separate this later on with a few dashes of white paint for the white water which separates the two layers. To paint the golden cliffs, I start by painting a mid-tone value of the general colour of the whole section of cliffs on the right hand side. And actually I had to climb down these cliffs twice to get here to paint, because about halfway down I realised that I'd forgotten my easel, and it's very hard to do a plein air painting without an easel. So I'm here with my dad and my sister, and they were walking down the cliffs with me, so I basically gave all my painting kit to my dad under the assumption that they were going to wait to the bottom. So I ran back to the car, got the easel, hiked all the way down these huge cliffs, and when I got to the bottom My dad and my sister weren't anywhere to be found, so I thought to myself, they've either gone left or they've gone right. So I went right, and that was when, after walking down the beach a bit, trying to look for my dad and my sister amongst the crowds, was when I quickly realised that it was a nudist beach and wasn't necessarily the best place to be staring at crowds of people. So I basically went all the way down to the far cliff in the distance and didn't see them, and then had to go all the way back and eventually found them. So this was a bit of a strange situation, but quite a funny one really, and it certainly is a beautiful beach to paint. I'm now painting the sea along the horizon, which is the darkest section of the sea and has a deep blue purplish hue. For this section I'm using ultramarine blue and a small touch of alizarin crimson and a small touch of titanium white, but a lot less white than I put into the other sections of the sea. I've left the middle section of the sea blank so far, as I'm going to paint some of the light, frothy sections of the waves in this section of the painting, and it's a lot easier to paint very light values on top of a dry section of the panel, rather than trying to paint directly over the blue sea and have the blue paint mix with my white paint, darkening the white paint as a result. As I paint these frothy sections of the waves, I leave some space to paint the dark green sections of the face of the wave. As to make the waves naturalistic, it's important not to paint them as solid, straight lines going out into the distance, as certain points break earlier than others, and there tends to be quite a lot of variety within a wave. I'm now using quite a fine filbert brush to pick out a few areas of white water closer to the shore. I'm also going back in and refining this first section where the waves break, and I'm adding a bit more white to the left hand side of these sections of the froth, as the sun has lightened the scene from the left, and I'm then adding a bit of ultramarine blue into my white mix to paint the shadow sides of the froth, to give it more three-dimensional form. I'm now painting in these darker sections on the cliffs caused by foliage and trees. As I do this, I add more titanium white to the colour mix for the dark sections in the distance to suppress the value changes, as due to atmospheric perspective, things in the distance have less tonal contrast. When I paint the foliage on the cliffs in the foreground, I paint with a darker colour mix which has less titanium white mixed in. As I paint the sand, I begin by painting the dark section which is closest to the sea. I then mix a lighter colour mix for the dry section of sand which sits next to this. And I use the same colour mix to paint the light sections on the right hand side, leaving these dark grey patches of sand as blank canvas for now, so I won't have to layer this dark colour on top of this light sand mix. Here I'm painting these dark grey areas on the sand. I paint the distance as a lighter grey with a soft transition into the surrounding areas. As the sand gets closer to the foreground, I paint the dark sections slightly darker and with more specific shapes, allowing for more contrast between these light patches of sand and this dark grey. I also add a few even darker brush strokes for the seaweed. I'm not using black on my palette, so to paint this I use ultramarine blue mixed with raw umber and a touch of alizarin crimson to create a really deep dark. Here I'm painting a few figures into the scene. As this is a beach in California, I feel like the scene wouldn't be complete without a few surfers, so here I'm painting two lads with their surfboards walking into the scene. When positioning figures in your painting, it's important to consider the overall composition. I position the figures on the left facing towards the centre of the painting as they help lead the viewer's eyes into the scene.
So I hope you've enjoyed that video of me painting here in California on Black's Beach. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel. Also, please do give me a super thanks. I'd really appreciate that if you decide to do that. And I'll see you in the next video.